You don't inspire confidence, Amy. Besides, you're too inexperienced for this. The words hung in the air like stale coffee. 7 years at Finn Enterprises. 7 years of being the human duct tape holding everything together. Too inexperienced? Her office reeked of expensive perfume and desperation masked as authority. Awards lined the walls, achievements that bore my fingerprints but her signature. The promotion letter sat on her desk, Derek's name printed in corporate serif font where mine should have been. I smiled. That practiced, polite smile I'd perfected over countless meetings where my ideas got credited to someone else. But inside? Inside, I was doing math. Calculating just how much this place would burn without me quietly putting out fires every single day. The clock on her wall ticked louder than her heartbeat. She was nervous. Good. She should be. Let me paint you a picture. Finn Enterprises thrived on illusion. From the outside, we looked like a well-oiled machine. Pristine quarterly reports, happy clients, smooth operations. Glass towers, marble lobbies, employees in $1,000 suits pretending they knew what they were doing. What nobody saw was me at 2 a.m., fixing database crashes while security guards made their rounds. Me writing step-by-step guides so my colleagues could handle basic client issues without embarrassing themselves. Me turning disasters into victories while others took the bows at company happy hours. Emma Walker ran our department like her personal kingdom. 5'0" with the personality of a cheese grater, she had this talent for making everyone feel simultaneously grateful and inadequate. She'd breeze into meetings wearing designer blazers that cost more than my monthly rent, deliver vague directives through perfectly whitened teeth, then disappear while the rest of us figured out how to make magic happen. Her management style? Delegate downward, claim credit upward. Classic corporate pyramid scheme, except instead of selling makeup, she was selling my competence as her own strategic vision. The promotion I'd been promised? Gone to Derek from accounting. Nice guy, zero experience in our field, but he had an MBA from some fancy school and played golf with the right people. Apparently, he inspired confidence with his firm handshakes and ability to use buzzwords like synergy without vomiting. The keynote presentation at next week's corporate summit? My name mysteriously vanished from the speaker list after being confirmed for months. Emma would be representing our department's innovative solutions I'd developed during nights and weekends while she was posting LinkedIn articles about work-life balance. Our department handled risk assessment for major corporate clients. Insurance companies, investment firms, manufacturing giants, all trusting us to identify potential disasters before they happened. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was about to become their biggest unidentified risk. You know that moment when you realize you're Charlie Brown and everyone else is Lucy with the football? That was Tuesday morning. I'd just finished salvaging a client relationship that Derek had nearly nuked in his first week. The client specifically requested me for all future communications after Derek suggested they pivot their risk tolerance paradigm during what should have been a routine quarterly review. Morrison Holdings had been on the verge of canceling their contract. Their CFO called me directly, bypassing Derek entirely. Amy, we need someone who speaks English, not MBA gibberish. Can you handle our account personally? 3 hours of actual work later, they'd upgraded their service package and referred 2 new clients. Did Emma thank me? No. She reminded me that Derek needed space to grow and I should support the team more collaboratively. Support the team. I'd been supporting this team so hard I'd forgotten what my actual job description looked like. Every crisis became my emergency. Server crashes at midnight? Amy will handle it. Client threatening to sue over Derek's strategic recommendations? Amy's problem. Presentation due tomorrow that nobody started? Don't worry, Amy stays late. Every impossible deadline became my personal challenge. While my colleagues left at 5 sharp for dinner reservations and gym classes, I'd be hunched over spreadsheets, turning incomprehensible data into coherent strategies. My weekends disappeared into client calls and system maintenance that should have been handled by our IT department, if we had one that worked. Every time someone said Amy will handle it, I did. Like some corporate superhero whose only power was making other people look competent while slowly dying inside. The breaking point? Finding out Emma had presented my process improvement framework to the board last month. My framework. My analysis. My 3 months of research into operational inefficiencies that could save the company millions annually. She called it her strategic initiative for organizational optimization. I'd watched the board presentation from my desk through the glass conference room walls. Emma clicking through slides I'd created, explaining concepts I'd developed, taking credit for insights I'd sweated over. The board loved it so much they approved a company-wide rollout with a $2 million implementation budget. Guess who got the implementation bonus? Not the woman who created it. Emma bought a new BMW that week. I got an email thanking me for my valuable input on the project. But here's what really twisted the knife: she'd edited my original presentation. Where I'd recommended promoting internal talent who understood these systems, she'd suggested hiring external consultants. Where I'd identified specific team members whose expertise was undervalued, she'd proposed restructuring around proven leadership. Translation: she was systematically erasing any evidence that good ideas came from below her pay grade. I sat in my cubicle that Tuesday afternoon, staring at my computer screen. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Emma claimed I didn't inspire confidence, I was literally the confidence everyone else operated on. Remove me from the equation and watch what happens. The department ran on Amy Johnson's standard time. My morning routine started at 6 a.m., checking overnight system logs, monitoring client communications, preemptively solving problems that would surface by lunch. I'd created backup protocols for our backup protocols. I'd documented processes that had only existed in people's heads. I'd built the invisible infrastructure that made Emma look like a management genius. What would happen if I just stopped? Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of throwing a fit or marching into HR with a resignation letter, I did something unexpected. I followed instructions. Precisely. To the letter. Emma wanted Derek to handle client relationships? Fine. I stopped intervening when he fumbled calls, stopped sending him prep notes before meetings, stopped cleaning up his grammatical disasters before they reached clients. She wanted collaborative support? I collaborated exactly as outlined in my job description: no more midnight saves, no more preemptive problem solving, no more going above and beyond. My daily guides that walked everyone through complex procedures? Discontinued. These weren't just simple instructions. They were comprehensive manuals I created covering everything from client onboarding protocols to crisis management procedures. People had been printing them out, laminating them, treating them like sacred texts. Without them, the department would be flying blind. My open door policy for panicked colleagues? Door closed. Literally. I started shutting my office door and putting on headphones. When people knocked with urgent questions, I'd politely direct them to their supervisors or suggest they check the employee handbook. You see, I discovered something beautiful in our employee handbook during a particularly boring Thursday afternoon. Section 4.7, employees are expected to fulfill their designated responsibilities within normal business hours. Section 8.2, initiative beyond role requirements, while appreciated, is not mandatory. Section 12.4, employees should seek guidance from immediate supervisors for tasks outside their job scope. Legal had reviewed these policies last year after some overtime lawsuits. Ironclad language designed to protect the company from exploitation claims. Funny how the same rules meant to protect workers could be weaponized by one particularly motivated individual. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being compliant. There's a difference, and it's called plausible deniability. The beauty was in the details. I'd been handling so many unofficial responsibilities for so long that people had forgotten they weren't actually my job. Client database maintenance? Not in my job description. After-hours system monitoring? Officially IT's responsibility. Training new employees? That was supposed to be handled by our training department, which had been temporarily restructured 2 years ago, meaning the responsibility had informally fallen to me. My actual job title was Senior Risk Analyst. My actual responsibilities, according to HR records, involved analyzing risk assessments for assigned clients and preparing quarterly reports. That was it. Everything else had been mission creep disguised as team collaboration. So I started analyzing risks. Just risks. Just for my assigned clients. Just during business hours. Just as specified in my employment contract. It was liberating, honestly. For the first time in years, I left the office at exactly 5 p.m. I turned off my work phone. I stopped checking emails from home. I rediscovered what weekends felt like. Meanwhile, I watched the ecosystem I'd been supporting start to wobble. Ever watch a controlled demolition? That's what the next 5 days looked like. Beautiful, methodical collapse, one support beam at a time. Monday, Derek accidentally deleted our client database backup while trying to optimize the user interface. Normally, I would have restored it from my personal archive, a shadow backup system I'd maintained because our official IT protocols were unreliable. This time? I filed a standard IT ticket through proper channels. Resolution time, 72 hours. Maybe. The panic started around 10 a.m. when Derek realized he couldn't access Morrison Holdings' account history. He wandered over to my desk, face pale as printer paper. "Amy, the Morrison files are gone. All of them. Can you fix this?" I looked up from my legitimate work with genuine sympathy. "That sounds like a serious IT issue, Derek. Have you contacted the help desk? I'm sure they'll prioritize it appropriately." By lunch, 3 more people had discovered critical files missing from the backup. By 3 p.m., Emma was fielding calls from confused clients asking why their account portals were displaying error messages. Tuesday, the accounting integration I'd been manually syncing every morning started throwing errors. This wasn't official work. I'd noticed the integration failing months ago and had been quietly fixing it rather than dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare of getting IT and accounting to coordinate a proper solution. Sarah from finance called me at 9:15 a.m., voice pitched with panic. "Amy, the numbers aren't matching again. The Morrison report shows completely different figures than what I have in my system." I smiled sympathetically while continuing to type my actual assigned work. "That sounds like a system integration issue, Sarah. Have you contacted IT? I'm sure they can run diagnostics on the data sync protocols. But you always fix this. It'll take IT weeks to figure out what you solve in minutes." I appreciate the confidence, but I think it's important for our official support channels to handle technical issues. That way, there's proper documentation and everything gets resolved through appropriate channels. Wednesday brought the Morrison Holdings crisis call. Our biggest client had questions about their quarterly strategy session, routine stuff that usually took 5 minutes of prep and a competent presentation of data I already had memorized. Derek was scheduled to handle it. I watched through my office window as Derek frantically searched through files, making phone calls, looking more desperate by the minute. Usually, I'd brief whoever was handling client calls, providing background context, potential concerns, suggested talking points, even scripted responses for tricky questions. Instead, I focused on my assigned quarterly risk assessment for Brennan Industries, actual work that had been sitting on my desk for weeks while I handled everyone else's emergencies. The Morrison call was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, Derek appeared at my desk, sweating through his expensive shirt. "Amy, I need the Morrison background files. The strategy recommendations. The risk mitigation proposals. Where do you keep them?" I glanced up from my computer. "I believe all client files are stored in our central database system. If you're having trouble accessing them, IT should be able to help with permissions. But the database is still down. And I know you have copies somewhere. I maintain files only for my assigned clients, Derek. Morrison Holdings is your account now, remember? I'm sure you've been keeping detailed records." 20 minutes later, I could hear Derek on the phone, stumbling through the most painful client conversation I'd ever witnessed. He promised deliverables that didn't exist, quoted statistics he'd clearly made up, and used so much corporate jargon that even I wasn't sure what he was trying to say. The Morrison CFO requested a follow-up call with someone who understands our account history. Specifically, he asked for Amy Johnson. Thursday, the presentation templates I'd created started corrupting. This was my favorite disaster because it was so beautifully technical. These weren't just PowerPoint templates, they were complex macro-driven documents that pulled live data from multiple databases, automatically generated charts, and formatted everything according to strict client branding requirements. Nobody knew they were built on a custom macro system I developed during weekend coding sessions. They just knew that when you used Amy's templates, your presentations looked professional and your data was always accurate. The prepared slides for next week's keynote turned into digital hieroglyphics. Charts became error messages. Client logos became corrupted image files. Carefully formatted tables turned into incomprehensible data dumps. I spent the morning listening to increasingly frantic conversations. "Has anyone talked to Amy about the presentation templates? Does Amy have backup versions? Can Amy fix the macro errors? My response remained consistent. I think IT should handle any technical issues with official presentation materials. That way, there's proper documentation and version control. Friday, everything unraveled at once. Phones ringing nonstop with client complaints. People running between cubicles like their hair was on fire, clutching printouts and looking desperate. Email servers crashing under the load of panicked internal communications. Emma emerged from her office looking like she'd seen a ghost. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her designer blazer wrinkled from stress. She surveyed the chaos with the expression of a general watching her army desert en masse. The irony? I was having my most productive week in months, focusing solely on my actual responsibilities. My risk assessments were thorough, insightful, delivered on time. My assigned clients were happy. My stress levels were at an all-time low. At 4:47 p.m., I finished my weekly report and prepared to leave at exactly 5 p.m. for the fifth consecutive day. As I packed my briefcase, I could hear Emma on a conference call with senior management, her voice strained. We're experiencing some temporary technical difficulties, but I assure you everything will be resolved by Monday's presentation. Temporary technical difficulties. That's what you call it when your entire operation depends on one person's unpaid overtime. The corporate keynote was Tuesday. Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day, and Emma burst into my workspace at 8:03 a.m., eyes red-rimmed and desperate. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, the conference room looked like a war zone, papers scattered everywhere, people arguing over laptops, Derek sitting in a corner looking like he was contemplating career changes. Amy. Her voice cracked like thin ice. We need to talk. Now. The whole department went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Keyboard stopped clicking. You could hear the air conditioning humming and someone's stomach growling from 3 cubicles away. The Morrison presentation is completely corrupted. The client integration is still down. Derek. She glanced back at him with barely concealed frustration. Derek needs help. The board is expecting our departmental showcase tomorrow, and nothing is working. I leaned back in my chair, maintaining that same polite smile I'd perfected over 7 years of corporate theater. That does sound challenging, Emma. How can I help within my designated responsibilities? Her left eye twitched. Don't play games with me, Amy. I know you have backup files. I know you can fix the integration. I know you've been behind every successful presentation we've ever given. Around us, colleagues had abandoned all pretense of working. They were watching this unfold like a tennis match, heads turning between Emma and me with each exchange. Some looked confused, they'd never noticed how much I'd been carrying. Others were nodding knowingly. They'd seen this coming from miles away. I'm not sure what you mean, Emma. I've been following my job description exactly as you outlined during our last performance review. Staying in my lane, focusing on my assigned duties, supporting the team through appropriate channels. Isn't that what you wanted? Emma's face cycled through several shades of red. The keynote is tomorrow. The board will be there. Morrison Holdings specifically requested you present their case study, but you're not even on the program because you said you didn't inspire confidence. The irony hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Morrison Holdings asking for me specifically, while I sat excluded from the speaker lineup because I supposedly lacked leadership presence. That does sound like a challenging scheduling conflict, I replied calmly. Have you considered that maybe the person who built these systems should be the one presenting them? I mean, if Morrison Holdings is specifically requesting me, perhaps there's something to be said for actual expertise over perceived competence. Emma's composure cracked completely. Fine. You want recognition? You can have it. You can present tomorrow. Just please, fix this mess. I tilted my head thoughtfully. That's a generous offer, Emma, but I'm not prepared to present work I wasn't originally assigned to showcase. It wouldn't be fair to the team members who were selected based on your competence assessments. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Emma's breathing was audible from across the room. What do you want, Amy? A promotion? A raise? Your name on the presentation? Just tell me what you want. What happened next was beautiful in its simplicity. I didn't need to demand anything, because the system was already correcting itself. Morrison Holdings CEO, William Morrison, stood up during Tuesday's keynote presentation and publicly praised the brilliant strategist at Finn Enterprises who turned our operations around. He spoke for 3 uninterrupted minutes about the risk assessment framework that had saved his company $12 million in potential losses, the process improvements that had streamlined their operations, and the insightful analysis that had prevented what could have been a catastrophic merger. Then he said the magic words, "I'd like Amy Johnson to stand up and take a bow for her exceptional work." Awkward silence. Heads turning, scanning the auditorium. Amy Johnson wasn't on the program. Amy Johnson wasn't listed in the speaker bios. According to the official materials, Amy Johnson didn't exist. The board noticed. Hard to miss when your biggest client is publicly praising someone who apparently doesn't exist on your org chart, while your official presenters stumble through corrupted slides and technical difficulties. Within an hour of the presentation's merciful end, I had calls from 3 C-level executives wanting to discuss my role in the company. By Thursday, I was sitting in the CEO's office explaining exactly how our department actually functioned versus how it appeared on paper. By Friday, there was an internal audit announced. Not of financial records, but of operational dependencies and knowledge management systems. They wanted to understand how so much institutional knowledge had been concentrated in one person who wasn't in any leadership position. Emma? She submitted her resignation the following Tuesday, citing strategic differences with company direction. Her exit interview probably made for interesting reading. The interim director's first act was restructuring our team around actual contributions rather than political connections and golf partnerships. Derek got reassigned to a role in strategic planning where his MBA buzzwords actually meant something and he couldn't accidentally delete critical databases. No hard feelings, he was just a symptom, not the disease. He was good at what he was good at, he just wasn't good at pretending to be me. The real victory wasn't watching anyone fail. It was proving that competence speaks louder than corner offices, that expertise trumps expensive suits, and that sometimes the best way to be seen is to let everyone else stumble around in the dark you used to illuminate for them. 6 months later, I'm presenting at industry conferences as Finn Enterprises Director of Risk Innovation. My process improvements became the company standard across all divisions. The recognition I'd been craving? It came naturally once I stopped letting others eclipse it with their borrowed light. The new organizational structure recognizes and rewards the people who actually do the work. We have proper documentation systems, official training programs, and something revolutionary, backup personnel for critical functions. No more single points of failure disguised as dedicated employees. My salary doubled. My stress halved. My weekends returned to me like old friends I'd forgotten I missed. Here's the thing about being indispensable, sometimes you have to become dispensable first. When you're always saving the day, people forget what disaster looks like without you. They confuse your stability with their competence, your expertise with their leadership, your results with their strategic vision. The most dangerous phrase in any workplace is "Amy will handle it," or whatever your name happens to be. Because eventually, Amy gets tired of handling everything while watching everyone else get credit, promotions, and recognition. So next time someone tells you that you don't inspire confidence while simultaneously taking credit for your work, remember, the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's following instructions so precisely that everyone finally sees what you've been doing all along. It's being so strictly compliant that your absence becomes impossible to ignore. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is exactly what they asked for. Nothing more. Nothing less. Just watch them realize what they're actually losing when the person holding everything together decides to let go. What's your invisible backbone story? Have you ever been the Amy in your workplace? Drop your experiences in the comments, I guarantee you're not alone. Subscribe if you enjoyed watching corporate karma work its magic with mathematical precision. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing a company can do is take their best people for granted. Stay quietly dangerous, my friends. The revolution starts with simply doing exactly what they pay you to do. Peace out, and may your competence be undeniable.